Hey everyone, I'm Rob, and today I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to review my completed arcade 1-up Space Invaders cabinet, as well as review the costs associated with modding it with a Raspberry Pi. As you'll see, I really didn't skimp on this mod, but I feel it's a good representation of how much things will generally cost when modding your arcade 1-up machine. I really hope you find this video helpful, and if you do, please hit the like button and subscribe. The single biggest expense is usually the arcade cabinet itself. I wanted to save a little money, so I searched for arcades that were on sale and available in my area. I found a Space Invaders cabinet on Walmart.com for $150 that came bundled with a Star Wars Battlefront 2 game for Xbox One. The game alone, at the time of making this video, is selling on GameStop.com for $34.99, so I could sell it and recoup a little money. The Space Invaders cabinets are not really perfect for modding, since they come with a 17-inch vertical screen. I planned on replacing the screen with a larger horizontal LCD, but decided to keep the original and use a Raspberry Pi vertical image consisting of over 350 retro arcade games instead. In the future, I might change this image to something else, but for now, it's what I've chosen, and I'm really enjoying it. Since the Raspberry Pi CPU is the brains of the system, I didn't want to cheap out on this component, so I ended up purchasing a Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 GB of RAM. This way I knew that I had enough processing power to play any of the games I wanted. Now granted, it may be a little overkill for retro emulation, but I'm happy with the purchase and I've had no problems whatsoever. I bought the Raspberry Pi 4 on Amazon.com for $61.70 with free shipping. I think that's a great price for a tiny little Linux-based computer that can run emulation and provide countless hours of fun. Since we're looking at the Raspberry Pi, I'm sure the first thing you noticed was the LED fan, which is part of the Geeks Chill tower case. I wanted to make sure that the Raspberry Pi stayed nice and cool when gaming, so I purchased this case on Amazon for $19.99. The case was really easy to set up, and it does keep the components on the board nice and cool. The Raspberry Pi doesn't come with an SD card, so I had to buy one. I picked up a 64 gig Sandisk Extreme that cost me $15.99. And lastly, to power up this bad boy, I purchased a Raspberry Pi 5.1 volt 3 amp US type plug power supply for $11.80. On the bottom left of the cabinet, we have an 8-plug surge protector that includes 3 charging ports and a 6-foot cord. I modified it by cutting off its plug and hardwiring it to a dedicated power switch on the back of the arcade cabinet that can turn on and off all the components at once. The surge protector was $26.99, and yes, I bought it on Amazon.com. One of the main components is the HDMI video encoder board with the touch controls. I bought this controller board on Amazon.com for $25.88 with free shipping. I mounted the encoder board to the back of the cabinet with PCB Mounting Feet that cost me $7.99 for a pack of 20. For those of you who haven't modded an arcade 1-up, you'll need this encoder board to send video signals to your arcade 1-up display from the Raspberry Pi. You'll need a micro USB to HDMI cable to go from your Raspberry Pi to the encoder board. I bought this cable on Amazon for $6.29. As you can see, the inside of the cabinet is lit up from the LED strips that are included with the marquee that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Before I received the marquee, I bought an LED light from my local hardware store for $19.99. Once the marquee was installed, I realized that there was more than enough light inside the cabinet due to the LED strip that was included with it. But I already installed the LED light, so I just left it in place. There are a few cables I haven't discussed inside the cabinet. This one goes from the USB port on the Raspberry Pi to a hole that I cut out on the front of the cabinet. This is a 2-port USB extender. I added the USB extender so I could easily connect any USB joysticks to the arcade or a keyboard when I want to make changes to RetroPie. I bought this on Amazon for $10.50, and it literally took me 5 minutes to install. This other cable is a 3.5mm RCA Audio Cable that sends audio signals from your Raspberry Pi to the amplifier that I mounted on the top of the cabinet. This is an Amazon Basics cable that cost me $7.78 on Amazon, again with free shipping. And this cable here is a DC power splitter. You'll need this to split power between your HDMI converter and the marquee. Granted, you could just plug the marquee's power supply directly into the surge protector, but I did it this way and it cost me $5.59 for a 2-pack. The last component inside the cabinet is the Inlet module 5 amp fuse switch with plug. I added this to the cabinet because I wanted a way that I could shut everything down at once on the outside of the cabinet. If you're interested in doing this, there's a great video that you can find on Beat Kong's YouTube channel that shows you exactly how to do it. This switch came in a 2-pack and cost me $7.99. Along with this switch, I went out and bought a 25-foot spool of wire for $12.98, a crimping tool for $23.99, a pack of male and female spade connectors for $6.99 a pack. So that's all the components on the inside of the cabinet. Let's take a look at all the fun stuff on the outside. I originally installed the amplifier on the inside of the cabinet. My first amplifier was a super cheap one and almost caught my cabinet on fire. So I ordered a new one and mounted it to the top of the cabinet for easy access. I got this amp from Amazon. It's a Kitner K2020A limited edition tri-path stereo amplifier that cost me $39.88. It sounds pretty good, and so far I've had no fires or problems with it. I mounted its power supply inside the cabinet and drilled a 3/4 inch hole to run the power and speaker wires from the amp to the speaker. I mounted it using heavy-duty Gorilla Tape that I picked up at my local hardware store for $6.99. As you can see, the cabinet is sitting on an Arcade 1-Up riser. I paid $59.99 plus $22.05 for shipping for a total of $82.04. On the front of the cabinet, you'll notice I added custom decals. I ordered these decals for both the panel and the riser from Gulf Coast Decals. They cost me $44.99 with $11.75 for shipping for a total of $56.74. The graphics kit is totally optional, even though I think it looks amazing. You could argue that the Lit Marquee is optional as well, but most people that I see online will add an LED Lit Marquee to their cabinet as their first mod. I ordered this marquee from Arcade Mod-Up. It came with the graphics, LED light strip, power supply, and hardware. It cost me $59.99, and I think it's well worth it. I wanted this arcade cabinet to have a little style, so I bought a 2-player 6-button skinned control deck from DIY Retro Arcade. I love how it looks, and so far it's really durable. I paid $59.99 just for the deck, plus $19.42 for shipping for a total of $79.41. The white LED buttons were purchased from Amazon.com for $11.09. The joysticks are Sanwa and cost me $23.95 each for a total of $47.90 for the two of them. The joysticks originally came with red ball tops, and I changed them out with these white bat tops. These cost me $9.99 for a 2-pack. And lastly, the Player 1 and Player 2 and coin buttons were $10.98 altogether. To get the controller to work with a Raspberry Pi, you need the USB controller boards, USB cables, as well as joystick and button wires. All that together for the wiring, cables, and boards cost me $9.99. And I needed 2 for a total of $19.98. If you don't want to spend the money on a new control deck, you can keep the original deck that came with the Arcade 1-Up, but I wanted a 2-player deck, and I think it's well worth the cost. I mounted the speakers under the control deck, so I had to purchase a J panel with speaker slots from Arcade Mod-Up for $19.99 plus $4.95 for shipping for a total of $24.94. And to wrap this all up, I added Boss BRS-40 4-inch 40-watt speakers for $11.99 a pair. Well guys, that's basically everything that went into modding my arcade Space Invaders 1-Up cabinet. I tried my best to be as thorough as possible to show you all the hidden costs involved in doing a build like this. With all the parts that I covered in this video, the grand total was $892.24. I think it came out really good. What do you think? Would you have done something differently? If so, hit me up in the comments and let me know. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. It lets me know you care. As always, please subscribe. And if you want to chat, leave a comment. Thanks for watching and have a good day.